Hey there! Welcome to Spectrum Pulse, where we talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And now we got a big one, the best albums and songs thus far in 2026. You know a sign that music discourse has generally been a bit quiet in the mainstream? The fact that seemingly for the past week or so, the most music discourse I have seen has been rooted around music journalists and critics and criticism, circling a review from nearly 2 years ago from an album that I had largely forgotten about by the end of that year, and some broad statements by some of my colleagues working around video about what position, historically or otherwise, they fall in the grand canon of music critics. This has, of course, brought a lot of print critics out of the woodwork to weigh in on the state of the industry, for better or for worse, where actually, paradoxically, there's more optimism than you might expect. In an era of AI slop that has wreaked havoc on search engine optimization, it has driven traffic down as a whole, but also within the backlash to that AI slop, a rise for authentic opinions who can speak truth to power and have some fun with it, while also not succumbing to the dated snark of the 2000s. Closer to the blogosphere era, hopefully learning some of the lessons of it. The problem appears to be less the critiques themselves, but more the distribution and promotion of those critiques, getting out to the right audiences that want them, because man alive, if there's a year in desperate need of clarity for those audiences, it's 2026. The mainstream charts are an underperforming mess across multiple genres. The sprawl of the indies and those nearest to them is only feeling more far-flung and disconnected, and halfway through this year, I'm not seeing that much in the way of easy consensus. And while I tend to think that's pretty damn great, it forces critics a little bit out of their comfort zone, requires them to dig a bit deeper, find and get behind acts that might not get that same attention or shine in bigger years. I don't know, actually go out on a limb, then take the easy critic bait, especially in the mainstream. But it also can make things a little bit more challenging for consumers who might feel overwhelmed by a glut of releases in the streaming era, not even having a clue where to start. This is made all the more complicated for some of my audience because 2026 was the year I largely stopped doing the straightforward album reviews, well, at least on video anyway. For my patrons and high-level YouTube members, I've written plenty of reviews this year on my Discord, covering nearly 80 albums. Now, that's a little bit less than previous year. I blame a very slow January for part of this, and it was a bit of a transition for me. I have had a busy year, but to my pleasant surprise, not only has this left me with plenty of projects to make an easy top 15 where I still had some painful cuts, but the pivot on this channel has only led to better analysis that I can be proud of, and more growth to boot. Not to mention the real possibility this list will be far less predictable than in previous years, and the presenter and showman in me always likes that. But what about my thoughts on genres this year as a whole? Well, courtesy of Billboard Breakdown, I've already been quite dismissive of whatever's really happening in the mainstream, but there is real quality outside of it, especially with pop that's having a remarkably strong year in terms of both singles and albums. Metal has also had a striking year, black metal specifically, but I've been told that for some other subgenres, the returns have been very strong. And while I'm more inclined to call country's year interesting rather than outright great, more because some of the crossovers with other genres have left the impact feeling a bit diffuse, it's easily having a banner year commercially, where more folks have been required to take it seriously. Took them long enough. But the genre that's been taking a beating this year so far has been hip-hop. It's been widely documented how rough mainstream rap's been, but I've also been less impressed by the underground too, at least so far. Feels like a much quieter year in comparison with the banner year that was 2025. Of course, there is the reality that I have not heard everything, and even amidst my headlong rush to get through all of my backlog, there's a possibility that there's something I haven't heard of or fully digested in the first half of 2026 that might show up on a list later this year, but that's par for the course. This is my 12th mid-year list. Y'all know what you're getting into by this point. So without further ado, number 15. So when I mentioned that music discourse feels lacking in clarity in 2026, I think some of that is rooted in a question of important albums. Records that meet the moment of the times we are in, feel increasingly relevant to the age, so we can talk about all the art and culture of it all. Critics want to be the stenographers of the age in and around art, feel like their words are more important than they actually often are, not the haggard, balding dudes at the back of the record store perpetually hungover or high, but usually able to point you in the right direction. This album's for that guy.
Nothing matters anymore, didn't you hear? Everyone is welcome to drown here.
Sturgill Simpson finally hits on a steady rhythm with his band, and he puts out the best album of his since the vinyl of 2019's Sound and Fury. For me, probably going back to 2016's A Sailor's Guide to Earth. And the vinyl conversation's actually relevant here because the initial physical-only push alongside Sturgill Simpson's other media antics put Mutiny After Midnight in the publicity cycle for way longer than it had any right to have. I discussed this at length in a very silly pirate-themed video essay, where it almost seemed like as soon as it actually made streaming, the conversation died abruptly. Seems like there's an interesting lesson to be learned there. I wonder if we could reflect on that. In any case, this is a little lower than I initially thought it would be, mostly because Sturgill Simpson isn't vocally at his peak, and the jamming slapdash irreverence of the album has its plenty of shaggy flaws, but Sturgill Simpson as full country funk pornographic sleazeball by way of Father John Misty, wry irony, but actually way more sincere than he will admit, wound up having a lot of staying power. It's a shameless and horny album, and quite frankly, all the better for it. Destined for a lot of garage beers and summer patios, but also just old enough to balance out and temper its edge, where his Hunter Biden energy wound up as kind of a compliment after all. You may have missed this given that it's not under Sturgill Simpson's actual name, it's more the Johnny Blue Skies thing, but if you want something built for the summer, this is worth it. Check it out. Number 14. So, remember when I said black metal had a good year so far? This is Panopticon's best album since probably 2015's Autumn Eternal, and like that album, it is a thunderous and complicated conclusion to a trilogy that engages with the savage wilderness to find its tranquility. But this is also the capstone to a very different trilogy and might wind up more challenging for it. Given the harrowing existential dread of Austin Lin's 2020's work, this is where he takes his environmentalist anarchism outside of himself to engage with the community of those living within nature and not simply vlogging it. Where if he is to try to find this grisly end, at least he feels less alone, probably even less than many who are presumably more connected online than ever before. This also translates into the sound, with this being Panopticon's most collaborative, symphonic, and thunderously sprawling arrangements to date, from dabbling in folk and post-rock to some of the act's heaviest work, while still centering the melodies that sound like storms that are raging across the frigid landscapes from Scandinavia to Minnesota. And that specific flashpoint of community only feels more frighteningly relevant, anticipated by more on that precipice. More on some of that in a bit, but until then, the haunted heart might be a ghost amidst that tempest, and yet it rides again. Number 13. So I said early on that hip-hop has had a pretty rough year in the mainstream and underground in my opinion, especially in comparison with last year, but I'm also aware I could well be missing things. Not to spoil anything, but I got a project for this summer to try and rectify one of my major blind spots in and around that scene. Stay tuned for that. But what has stuck out with me in 2026 is where rap music is fusing within other genres and aggressively experimentally pushing its sound. No, not what JPEG Mafia is doing. There are two records on this list that directly showcase some of that experimental rap, and I think there's a slight poetic irony that my last cut from this list was the excellent new Rock Marciano album 656 in favor of this.
Left side to the right side, front side to the back. Stampede if you with me.
part of me wants to retcon that this is actually Genesis Owusu's sophomore album and not Struggler, but the more accurate observation is that Red Star Wu is the amplification of what that 2023 project represented, taking its nervy, high-concept foundation and post-punk sound and blowing it into the stratosphere with a genre-breaking epic that is stacked to the gills with manic intensity, cutting socio-political insight, and a very welcome sense of optimism on where that future can be found. That's what caught me off guard in the best way possible. Genesis Owusu has seen more success in his native country, and that tension with the more challenging systemic reforms to actually change things, that can leave an artist just crushed underfoot by the weight of it all, but his careening attitude, his broad stroke populism, and his fearsome soundscapes actually give him a foundation to keep barreling forward, that there is something that can be made better, and even if the work is difficult, he's prepared to take the bruises and just do it. That radical core of empathy, the joy as an act of resistance, it can wash over you, kind of leave you gasping underfoot for just how much this album throws in your face. And again, not every swerve lands, as you would expect, but Genesis Owusu is a force to be reckoned with, and sometimes for such a scourge, you need to bring the hammer down. This rules! Now, before we go on any further, I got a bunch of songs that I would like to highlight that are from albums that are not on this list, but deserve a little bit of shine anyway. As per usual, I'll be peppering some of these throughout the list. All of them are worth hearing. Please go check them out. From Don't Be Dumb, featuring Doechii, Robbery by A$AP Rocky.
Open up your legs, save a spot for me, babe. Make it happen, babe. Kissing on your girl, swap with me, babe.
From Valentine, Everybody Wants to Feel Like You by Courtney Marie Andrews.
Everyone wants to feel like you. Everyone wants to feel like you do. Everyone wants to feel like you.
From The Fall Off, The Let Out by J. Cole.
The let out, will we survive the let out? 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 Will we survive the...
From The Apple Tree Under the Sea, WWWWW by Hemlock Springs.
Sincere. I want your love.
From Luck or Something, We Don't Talk by Hilary Duff.
Talk about anything anymore. We don't talk, we don't talk about it. We don't talk about anything anymore.
And From the Mountain, featuring the late Mark E. Smith, Delirium by Gorillaz. Okay, let's get back to the full list here. Number 12. So one of my longer videos this year was a songwriter showdown between two artists, where I imagine pitting them against each other. That would have been way more contentious than it seemingly wound up being, or at least would have drawn in a lot more attention or backlash to it. In retrospect, maybe it was just too outrageous for people to take seriously. Maybe that's why they bounced off it. But I think what was more likely is that I just didn't get to either of their audiences and get them to tap in. I get the impression that for one of them, they're way more active outside of YouTube, and for the other, well, the artist just turned 60 this year, and he's been very niche his entire career. I'm not surprised some of his older fan base might have missed my video. So, my challenge is getting more folks to actually come around and care about this album. Let's try here.
So I took my show on the road, and I made some good friends that I still have today. Then I talked to the girls that smiled at me. But in the end, I realized it's probably best just to let them be.
I'm not sure why I slipped out of touch with Bill Callahan throughout most of the 2020s. He's got classic albums I love in the 2010s. I really liked Gold Record in 2020, but throughout most of this decade, his work hasn't really quite connected. I've largely skipped past it. My Days at 58 changed that in a big way, although funnily enough, so much of it feels familiar to what makes Bill Callahan so special. His remarkably pleasant vocals, the fascinatingly odd melodic compositions and production that can match the abstract sprawl of his very conversational writing, and some of his most humanistic and diaristic yet playful lyrics of his entire career. And while some have been reticent about this pivot for the potential to get more sentimental, Bill Callahan seems refreshingly uninterested in any sort of detached cool in comparison with the human connections that he knows matter far more. An understated yearning in an increasingly strange world. It's touching, it's introspective, it's frequently low-key hilarious in the best way possible. It's funny without trying to be. I mean, these are days that can ring forth plenty of pathos, and this far into his career, it's thrilling Bill Callahan is still looking for more. Number 11. Well, you know, speaking of low-key weirdness that still manages to find pathos for me... In 2022, Spunkshine blew my mind with his brand of progressive house and ambient music. A deconstructive yet reconstructive swerve with a memory of something vast and elemental that easily stands as some of the best electronic music of the decade so far. And while he can occasionally be drawn towards some of that ambient, down-tempo murk that I find a little less interesting, when he steps towards a lot of swaggering, textured grooves and a goading, meta-modern refusal in order to make it easy on you, that prankster impulse is considerably more compelling. Siege engines probably exist in that frame. A playful middle finger to quantification that nevertheless feels centered in a difficult yearning to make its ambiguity resonant, with a sound that feels both historic and futuristic and ricocheting in between them wildly, where the old and analog still works enough beneath the dust of misuse or disinterest, but can still spark forth magic. I know a lot of folks have fallen over themselves praising the new Boards of Canada and their long-awaited comeback. Probably should get around to that one eventually. I'll have to see. But Spunkshine has been here the whole damn time, remembering so you don't have to. But you should probably remember anyways. Good luck getting the explanation. That's part of the fun. Number 10. And you know, while we are on the topic of long-awaited comebacks, although it's not surprising this one has not received the same level of attention.
With every sip that I take, I'm a little more gone. And I'm seeing her face, so it won't be long till what's holding me together starts coming unwound. Brother, you wouldn't wanna be me right now.
So Ward Davis is a name that you will recognize most from reading a lot of liner notes on the edges of indie country and southern rock, often in and around Cody Jinks' circle. But 2020's Black Cats and Crows blew my mind and put Ward Davis on the map, and now a long 6 years later he is back with a divorce album that's gonna rip your heart out. Brief quick tangent. I've seen more than a few commentators who probably should know better argue that conservatives can't make good art. And I think that there's a gentle counterpoint on themes where conservative lens can actually ring out a lot of pathos. Older people reflecting upon the changes in the world around them that they don't fully understand, and specifically a lot of men reflecting on circumstances they can't fully control and maturely learning how to accept them, especially around family. I wish I could remember the Skeet on Blue Skye covering that conversation. I want to say it was in something with John Darnielle, the Mountain Goats. It was fascinating. And see also, that last clip album if you want a perfect example. And the fact that Ward Davis tackles the layers of depression, anger, melancholy, and eventual acceptance in his journey while making rock-solid southern rock and country with a level of measured nuance and framing, giving himself enough rope that he'll often be his own worst enemy in that struggle to move forward, is just incredibly well written and thoughtful, easing its edges with a lot of maturity, and one of the most underrated indie country albums of 2026. You probably missed this. And you shouldn't have. And now while y'all get to arguing about my points around conservative art in the comments down below or in this premiere, or subscribe to the Patreon to get access to my Discord to yell about me more directly, how about a few more songs from albums that did not make this list? From Trying Times, The Death of Love by James Blake.
It never seemed so hard say what you really mean when everything you have seen is from above.
From It's Fine to Dream, Kate Said by You Are an Angel.
Past this ache to all of my wasted days. I'm so small I can finally take a breath. Yeah!
From The Way I Am, Daytona 499 by Luke Combs.
We could have been burning out instead of burning out before that finish line. But we were Daytona 499.
From Whatever's Clever, featuring Kenny G, Cry by Charlie Puth. From Extra Cheese, I Need a Hobby by Nah Really.
Body, your work that turn this to something slightly more. Now I'm looking for a game to play without keeping a score. Yo, I need a hobby. Probably I got too good and developed a body. Your work that turn this to something slightly more. Now I'm looking for a game to play without keeping a score.
And from This Music May Contain Hope, featuring Hans Zimmer, Click Clack Symphony by Ray.
Symphony, I love the sound of it. Who let the girls out? I did, darling. She's empowered by the sound of us marching. Her legs are hurting, but her back is still arching. And the sound reminds me that it's going to be on.
Okay, now let's keep going on to the list. Number 9. Okay, I'm gonna say this now. Olivia Rodrigo's third album is not on this list. You seem pretty sad for A Girl So in Love. It is great, don't get me wrong, but it was one of the albums cut that will probably wind up the aggregate pick for a lot of critics at the end of this year. If Uproxx is still doing their poll, and they really should be, I would put money on it probably coming in second place, like her last two projects. Instead, if we're looking for the album that had an album bomb on the Hot 100 this year, and was still great enough to get here, and might be contentious.
Look at you, girl, cross the state lines with your shadow, trying to run away, change your zip code. Turns out that you're still an asshole.
Yes, I know. You don't have to say it. I've already thought about it. And if you want to slam the artist in question, I'm fairly certain Noah Kahan created more cutting disses towards himself on this album than you have in your arsenal. But I'm also not about to apologize for this. It was the leap that I wanted him to take. The production is markedly more diverse and textured. There's a greater breadth of emotion and intensity, to say nothing of theme and subject matter. It's got the best 3-song run of any album I've heard this year, with Haircut, Willing and Able, and Dashboard, and if it was a little bit tighter, it would even be higher on this list. Hell, for as much as Noah Kahan does not mind the Mumford & Sons comparison, this is better written and more interesting than anything that group ever put out, and Noah Kahan probably does not have the skeletons that Marcus Mumford does. He should really go talk to Laura Marling and get that full story. It might disillusion him a bit. Moreover, what I like about The Great Divide is its willingness to actually sit in that discomfort, the hard hard conversations that go past the easy facts and deal with ugly emotions, flawed people, too much history, a little bit too much beer, and the fact that you still have to find a way to actually live around these people. And hell, sometimes you're the asshole after all. This is not the safe album that Noah Kahan could have made, where it's not just a testament to his taste and craftsmanship, but also try way harder. It's ambitious and quietly challenging and striving for that human connection. There was a reason I put him alongside Bill Callahan. I think there's more in common, because I also think he deserves it. And this album is great. Give it a chance. Number 8. Now granted, you can take those risks and you can make the big swings, but there's the other side of this, where you know what works, and you get the old producer back who knows the formula, and you happen to get a glimpse of the nostalgia for this time around, and then strike when the iron's hot. Let's make this clear. If Metric was just going back to their old Fantasies era sound with some modern polish and the hooks for days, okay, they'd still have a shot to make this list for me. That album is a Canadian classic, and Metric's brand of burly, synth-driven indie rock goes ridiculously hard. It's why Art of Doubt and the two Formentura albums that they've kept way more momentum than the majority of their peers. But it wasn't just getting Gavin Brown back that gave this album its power. It was Emily Haynes and the band taking a stark look at aging, playing smaller stages, reflecting on their legacy, and becoming comfortable being the veterans, who are a little overlooked but can hold it down like nobody's business. When I did my larger video on Canadian music, Metric was the last act I highlighted because what they remind me of most are the scrappy regulars, the hometown heroes, who you can expect to go kick ass, but every so often show that they got way more gas in the tank and probably deserve the chance to show it off. Romanticize the Dive tempers that nostalgia with self-aware earnestness, and again, so many hooks. The songcraft is so great. My god, this kicks ass. Y'all should check it out. Number 7. So here's an interesting quandary following up that last entry. I can't say in good conscience that this is the best album from the artist in question, mostly because the industrial realities of releasing music in her system means that they got no idea how to market her biggest ambitions. In fact, I don't think they got the slightest clue how to market her in general. It's maddening. And it would take a lot to get out from that shadow of that project. Give me another year or two, I'd probably call it a classic, but sometimes you have to play in a different lane if you want to see that success. And thus, when I say that I got complicated feelings about country music having a great year, especially in the mainstream when this was not a monster hit and it should have been.
Wow, you missed the fire and the freedom when there wasn't anything keeping you from being wild.
No, it's not Lindeville. But Wild might as well be the next best thing. With John Osborne thankfully taking over for Jay Joyce on production, the first half of this album is snarled, heavy, ruckus southern rock that's set up to rip down the stages. And the second half is some phenomenally well-written country music, where Ashley McBryde proves not just the heir to someone like Reba McEntire with her pipes, but also in the masterclass of crafting great hooks or scenes, or being able to pick out the ones that suit her best. Like with Ward Davis, the second half of their album is where the meat really is. And while I'll give a lot of flowers to Ella Langley or Megan Moroney for their mainstream breakthroughs while keeping their sound mostly intact, Ashley McBryde is the hard-bitten, complicated, slightly older ass-kicker in Women in Nashville that needs to scare the average mass-produced bro or marketing via controversy sleazebag out of here. I'd say that if more people knew what this was that the mainstream was capable of, country would not have as much of a bad reputation as it occasionally does. But they're not paying me shit. And I'm not about to defend Music Row's egregious missteps. Let's just keep it wild. At least with Ashley McBryde, she proves you can. Alright, we got a few more songs from albums that aren't quite gonna make this list. Let's kick it off with a little bit more edge. From Worst Girl in America, Old Technology by Slater. From Distracted, featuring the Lemon Twigs, What Is Left to Say by Thundercat.
You could spend your whole life trying to find a way that you feel inside. Could it all just be a lie? Ooh.
From Whole World as Vigil, Praxis by Lauren Otter.
All the little things done to keep this true. All the sleight of hand just to make it
through. From Super Bloom by Jessie Ware.
Take me back to the place where we met, super blooming every day. Held in your arms, loving forever, rise and fall.
From Lose Yourself, Shipwrecked by Enter Shikari. And from The Acrobat, featuring I'm With Her, Gray Like Emmy Lou by Tennille Towns.
Around your shoulders, hope you get bay windows facing the moon. An Oscar Wilde stitch on your pot holders.
Okay, we're up to the big guns here. Strap in for number 6. I'll be honest, this is one of those albums that I've struggled to properly discuss, where it might be why it does not have that full-length video specifically focusing on it. It's also the album where I went back multiple times to be absolutely sure that it was worthy of placing this high, because for acts that pull out projects entirely in a different language with extended songs and runtimes that are purposefully intended to be this challenging, you want to be sure Yeah, this was my introduction to Miserere Luminis. I was not following black metal when they first broke out in 2009. I did not really know their influences, and I passed them over completely when they came back in 2023. I'm not about to make that mistake twice, because Sedera is a goddamn tour de force. The production has become only more refined and detailed with time, where the hurricane of pummeling riffs and cacophony seems built to surround you from every single angle, bear down and force you to experience an existential nightmare, only for them to shoulder some of that weight, helping you in both internal and external struggle, where their form of love might be just as flawed, or maybe flayed is the better term, shedding parts of yourself in order to survive and erupt out of the brink. It is a challenging behemoth of a project, but the melodies are strikingly gorgeous every time, and when translated, the poetry and the text and metatext is so stirring. An ordeal that's worth feeling every shuddering step, blinking back tears from the wind in the eye of the storm. Yeah, it's special. Number 5. I don't think folks are going to be surprised that this is this high on my list. His last album certainly got there, probably even higher throughout the course of the year, and that might well happen here too. And while I think this might have a slightly lower ceiling, it still aims high. And you know, I look back on that video I made, I don't think Washington's probably going to take me up on the offer. Looks like they're living down to the album art.
God bless the USA. God bless the USA. God bless the USA. God bless the USA. Hey.
So Vince Staples has been spitting in your faces in more ways than one for so long, I'm distinctly annoyed that it's taking until this for a lot of folks to recognize it, or that you might deserve it. I found it particularly revealing that I had to use rock in order to do so, and for some folks to wake up on what he's actually saying. And man, that just pissed off everyone, exactly as he planned. But what he has always been great at is ripping any and all veneers away, where simplistic, blunt language can mask deeper layers and complexity, but is just as effective when it bruises rather than cuts. Crybaby trades the expansive introspection of Dark Times for some of his sharpest, tightest grooves, his great hooks, and a broader focus that sees American propaganda withering on the vine. The white picket fence has barbed wire, the apple pie got poisoned, the red, white, and blue are the lights on the pigs on parade. And if you think you've heard it all before, why hasn't anything changed? Or are you just complicit in playing for the entertainment games rather than actually doing shit? I will add that this is a rating that includes the physical exclusive bonus cut in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that puts Vince's politics much more sharply in view and really serves as the perfect counterpoint for those who aren't willing to go outside. But what he knows is that so few bother to care, and that's why my thesis of the half-trolling video of why he should play American Freedom 250 is that the majority of the audience wouldn't even fucking know what he was saying before it was too late. But also, they probably wouldn't care. Only in America, right? Whatever, it kicks ass. Number 4. I'll admit, of the albums on this list, this one's probably jumped up and down the most, because like with Ashley McBryde, I'm placing it in the context of what came before. But hey, if Wall Socket was for the boys and this is for the girls, I think the girls may have gotten the better deal.
I already know, but you don't gotta say another word. 'Cause I already know you type of girl. You don't gotta talk to me. I know what you want from me. It's finally time for me to get a turn. Part of me is hoping that I get you. I get you.
I'm gonna put money on this. If Underscores does not get a crossover mainstream pop hit on her own, it'll come with production credits taking a banger just to the next level. Because You is elevated to that zenith, hitting the razor-tight balance in between 2000s nostalgia, and not for some of the obvious hits, that's why it's great, and the hyperpop that can push the genre not just to the next level, but feel in direct continuity with its influences and its greatest strengths. And that can do a lot of heavy lifting on its own, but when you infuse it with self-conscious metatext about the reality of being that pop star, only amplified by queerness and specifically her trans experience, where she is constantly aware of being perceived and how that colors and intermingles with a lot of her pop themes, where it can fucking suck to be perceived in the wrong way, but you serve anyway because that's what makes life worth living. Yeah, that absolutely hits the spot. I may have overthought many an angle around the whole for the girls qualification with Underscores when I made that video. Hi April, love that you provided that context in the comments. It's exactly the sort of dialogue that I love to see. But again, when you reckon with how razor tight and stuffed with the best pop music of 2026 this is, I think I get you. Tell me, but don't tell me. But enough with all the coy references. We got the last couple songs to highlight from albums that did not quite make this list. From Notes from Inside, Learning to Drive Again by Adeem the Artist.
I'm learning to drive again, revving the loud engine, drown out the voices of my past with the fierce power of the present. I am learning to drive again.
From Kehlani, featuring Usher, Shoulda Never by Kehlani.
I would've made a decision that was better than this instead of wasting my time. I try to stop myself in time. I did it anyway, I probably should've never did it. When I knew better, but I didn't do no better. I just wasted my time.
From Between Us, Desire's Got Some Questions by R. Kells.
Anything and kiss me once before you leave. We know what's meant to be will be. Desire's got
some questions with his hand up. And I don't have any of the answers.
From Remember the Humans, Hey Amanda by Broken Social Scene. From Tulsa Turnaround by Jason Eady.
What a sound. Oh, children, won't you get back down? I'm doing that Tulsa turnaround.
And from You Seem Pretty Sad for a Girl So in Love, The Cure by Olivia Rodrigo.
No matter how your love feels anymore, it'll never be the cure. It'll never be the cure.
And now, on to the top 3 of this list. We're at the end game here, folks. Number 3. As I've gotten older, one thing that I increasingly value in the albums I praise is songcraft. And for pop music, it's getting to the killer melodic hooks, strong performances, and production that can flatter all of it. Maybe some good harmonies along for the ride, especially in the vocals. Decidedly more difficult to come by than you might expect. It seems rare and rare sometimes these days. Now, this group was always on the cusp of getting there about 4 years ago, but the polish wasn't quite in the details. This year, that's not the issue.
You're the wall that I keep banging the against. I'm always saying this time I'll get through. I know with a bruise as a consequence. I know how to hurt myself on you.
I'm genuinely surprised that this album is not getting more attention. Sure, there's nothing quite as viral as Silk Chiffon, but Dancing on the Wall is Muna's formula pushed to its zenith. The chemistry is incredible, the production nimbly balances throwback textures with modern touches, and the opening run of this album has some of the best hooks that I have heard all year in pop music. But what puts Muna on a different tier this time is the songwriting. The dance floor sensuality turned up, the tinge of desperation amplified but grounded in the lingering metatext of what it means to be a queer band making this kind of music in 2026, with all the political commentary behind it, but not shying away from the human messiness of these scenes. Where after the adrenaline rush of their self-titled album, this is the project that's trying to live in its wake, keep hope alive. And it's the most fun I had with any album thus far this year. I understand why some have probably slept on this if you think Muna's formula is a little bit obvious, but this is damn near it perfected. In my opinion, best pop album of the year. Y'all should hear it. Number 2. Okay, truthfully, this year came down to a horse race between 2 projects that, if I'm being completely honest with myself, they probably aren't even the best of each artist's respective catalogs. Maybe that's the reason that neither project seems to have gotten the attention from outside of me that they deserve, from the listening public or the critics, print or online. But in this case, I think folks are running out of excuses. Because in a rough year for hip-hop, you need to highlight when they actually meet the goddamn moment.
Even after you burn the last book from out the library, the future is non-binary. Behind every word another day is passed. Danger lays in the grass and fortune favors a sociopath. Still on his past, still known to rock a mask. And write his raps in all caps as doom pass. People get excited when we cue up the boom bap. Woke up all the grown-ups like we bringing their youth back.
B. Dolan's mid-2020s run has been nothing short of astounding. Not just with 2024's fantastic The Wound Is Not the Body, focus on his agonizing recovery, but the natural sequel this year with Fight Naked. Taking his relentlessly conscious wordplay, texture production, genuine humor, balanced out by a darker, angry pathos, and then adding a lot of the more complicated conversations that come when you have to look outside of yourself yet again. Engaging systemically, where specifically for a lot of guys, this is the hard stuff that demands introspection, actually requires you put in the work. It's not surprising that B. Dolan has some of these politics, but his candor and his empathy, balanced with his willingness to rip your heart out or stomp out his adversaries, is the place where rap should be, especially for men of his age, and especially this year. My video covering this album was partially an excuse to deal with some old business of mine when the whole manosphere targeted me actually pre-Gamergate, mostly in the desperate hope that folks would actually swing around and hear B. Dolan. Kind of clickbaited y'all a little bit to maybe take more of his work to heart. I can only shout about it for so long. He's probably going to face some competition for the top rap album of the year, given what's coming up in the pipeline. We got 6 more months to go. But in terms of chronically underrated MCs who are miles ahead of the pack when it comes to forward-thinking and progressive hip-hop, he's come so goddamn far since The Failure was an abstract classic in its own right. This is something special. Y'all should hear it. And finally, number 1. I opened up this piece with some observations on critics and this ecosystem, where as much as I can understand that a lot of writers love writing about the state of their culture, on some level the work still has to get done. And it's hard not to look at this list and feels like there's so much left to do. And this is the hard part. How do you build groundswell for a name that doesn't have the PR monster churning out behind it on social media? How do you ensure names show up on the radar of other critics who inevitably have their own favorites that they want to surface? How do you get people to care about niche genres or subgenres or artists who might be making some of the best music of their respective years, but you're fighting uphill to get their names to the forefront? I'm still trying to figure out all the answers to that question. That's an ongoing struggle. In the meantime, she's making the music, and she did it again.
I believe in love that deepens every season, comes around again.
Comes around again.
Emily Scott Robinson has made 3 of the best albums of the past 10 years of any genre, and while there's a part of me that looks at Appalachia and said it doesn't quite have the gut punches of her last 2 full-length, there's not a Let 'Em Burn or The Dress or Run, she's still a better songwriter and performer than the vast majority of her peers. She's in a league of her own. And yet the more I think about it, the more the approachability of Appalachia burnishes its soft power. The production's more inviting, the compositions feel more organic and alive than ever before. The collaborations are inspired. John Paul White, formerly of the Civil War, shows up on Cast Iron Heart, and the chemistry of A Simple Love Song is spellbinding. And you know what, actually come to think of it, with Time Traveler, she actually does have one of those gut punches after all, especially with the quiet grace and empathy that can create such magic. But I think the reason that this album held up so well for me, that it's my number 1 at this point of the year, meets the moment in spades, is that for as much fire and brimstone as you can muster, you need to be able to exhale. Find quiet moments and community, the time for flowers and love along the way. Not just pure escape, but the recognition of solidarity in what we're fighting for. A hymn for the unholy, to become unquantifiable, with a candle that never goes out. And as of the end of June 2026, for me, it's the best album of this year. Whether it holds that title until the year end remains to be seen and heard, but in the meantime, Emily Scott Robinson should be on all of your radars. I've been saying it for years. And it's not just for those in the know. Let's make it happen, folks. I know y'all can do it. And yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to see more, please be sure to like, share, drop comments, subscribe. I don't know these sorts of call to actions at the end anymore. Maybe some of y'all are waiting for it. Well, here's your opportunity. Also, get down in the comments. Put out your own list of the mid-year. I know this year I don't expect there to be a ton of consensus, but I'm curious where y'all are going to talk about and what I potentially could have missed. Also, speaking of which, coming up in a couple of days after this video goes live to the public, we're going to have our anniversary special where, once again, y'all will be voting off one of my posts of what album from 2025 that I should go back and cover that I may have missed last year. I'm knowing that all of y'all will have a lot of fun with that. You always tend to. But beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if y'all want to get involved in maybe seeing some of my reviews up early, predominantly on my Discord before they get posted to my blog, or hell, just want to contribute to my schedule, or get our albums there, or argue with me on that Discord directly, link to my Patreon and YouTube memberships is right over there. Once again, don't feel obligated. It's tough times out there, believe me, I know, and hey, the option's just available. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse. We'll see what the rest of 2026 might bear, but until then, I'll see you next time.